welcome to 2018 Oakland VegFest, and we have very, very, very special guests coming up all the way from SoCal, all the way from SoCal, San Diego. How many people love San Diego besides me and Jason Mraz? We really, really love it. It's the best. I've got Callie and Nichole, better known as the Vegan Warrior Princess Attack Show. You guys listen to that show? Everybody, dropping those podcasts. There you go. I see some fans. Yes, Nichole and Callie are the founders and co-hosts of the podcast known as the Vegan Warrior Princess Attack. They launched the show in 2015 and had a lot of fun attacking a wide range of topics, from radical, pro-intersectional, anti-capitalist, feminist, anarchist, and of course, from a vegan perspective. I would love to welcome Callie and Nichole to the Oakland VegFest 2018 stage. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Having a fun day so far, I hope. First, just want to start by thanking the Oakland VegFest for having us here. Of course, we're very honored to be here. And thanking all of you for attending our speech, letting us, share some of our ideas with y'all. So the title of our speech today is Practicing Veganism. And if you happen to have followed our show and you know what we're about, the last couple months we've been transitioning into a more radical vegan position, and we've been talking about this idea of practicing veganism, which has a couple different meanings, which we'll get into later. So the first thing I want to talk about today is the idea of wearing the word vegan as a label. So fair warning, I have a vegan tattoo, she has a vegan tattoo. We totally get the idea of branding ourselves as a vegan and wanting to belong to a community. There's a lot of strength that happens when we can come together and share insights and rants and gripe about what it's like to go through the world as a vegan. So we're definitely not saying that that's not important. But when we wear the word vegan as a label, it is vulnerable to attack, which, if you've ever been on Facebook, you're probably aware of this. Everybody wants to attack how vegan you are, if you're vegan enough, if you're too much of a vegan, if you're a level 5 vegan and living on air like Lisa Simpson, right? When we allow the word vegan to become an identity, when we have a vegan card, when others are allowed to comment on how vegan we are or how perfectly we live as a vegan, we kind of open ourselves up to this criticism. And it gets really difficult as vegans to deal with this. Not only do we deal with feedback and pushback from our family and friends, but we also deal with it when it comes to each other. The vegan police, the reason it's so memeable is because that's a real thing. A lot of people like to criticize which products you buy, if you checked all the labels, is sugar vegan, is sugar not vegan? And we just spend a lot of time infighting about how perfect vegans we are. So when we wear vegan like a label, we allow this conversation to happen, and we allow conversations about taking someone's V card and if they're perfect enough. And really, it's demotivating to people, it's demoralizing, and we waste a lot of time, frankly, on this idea. So the next thing I want to talk about is the idea that calling ourselves vegan and using that as an identity centers us in the animal liberation movement instead of the work that we're trying to do and the animals that we're trying to help. When we spend so much time focused on what products are vegan, how perfect you are as a vegan, what groups you belong to as a vegan, we end up policing each other. We waste a lot of time infighting. And frankly, we lose a lot of people from feeling like they can't stand the purity test. And as we heard in the last speech, we end up kicking people out of our movement or losing people that don't feel like they identify. If you're not thin, white, cis, straight, if you don't look the way a lot of people think vegans should look, it can be very hard to be in this movement. And that's really because of the policing. So Nichole and I have been really focused on this idea of practicing veganism and what that means. So we are starting to transition our views and the way we talk about veganism on our show as not so much focused on you being a vegan, but about practicing veganism. That by practicing veganism, it's an ethical stance. They are actions that you're taking on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, what have you, to try to fight for animal liberation, to try to end the exploitation of non-human animals. And that takes yourself out of it. It decenters the focus on you being a vegan and the struggles that we have. And of course, we can still have those conversations about what it's like to be vegan and practice veganism, and we can talk to one another and relate, and we can still have the memes and the jokes and the, you know, where do you get your protein question, and we can talk about what it's like over the holidays, dealing with family who is sometimes not vegan. But the focus should be a lot less on policing each other and ourselves and more about the work that we do daily to upset the exploitation of animals. Practicing veganism also can have another meaning too. It can be allowing people who maybe don't feel like they're perfect yet, who maybe feel like they have products that they still have, or there are things that they have to buy or consume, like medicine. Maybe they have an old leather jacket or boots that they've been keeping in their closet that they don't want to get rid of because they're trying to practice not consuming. It allows them to focus on the actions they're taking and build up to it. It's a lifestyle and not this purity test that we're going to give you, and then you can say, okay, I've done it, I'm vegan, it's it, I buy a Gardein now, done. I've succeeded, and that's all I'm going to worry about. So the idea of practicing veganism allows people the opportunity to build up to it, to focus on the right things, to shift focus from themselves and how perfect they are into the actions that they're taking. Yeah. So this can be a difficult concept. A lot of people who are already vegan, I know, kind of struggle with this idea. And we're certainly not trying to take anyone's identity away. That's actually kind of the whole point of this speech, that we're not the vegan police. Nobody should be the vegan police. No one should be able to come in and say, you are not vegan enough, you don't belong in this group, you don't belong at this event. And a way to communicate this to people, instead of maybe saying, I am vegan, say, I practice veganism. And that could have multiple meanings, like I mentioned. That could mean you already are vegan and you're just focused on the work, or it could mean that you're building up to veganism. So we want to make space for people, because we know sometimes veganism is not accessible to everyone as much as we would like to think that everyone has the opportunity to go vegan. And I know there are memes that go around talking about how affordable rice and beans are, and if everyone could live off rice and beans, there's no reason why anyone should not be vegan. But we really don't want to have people that feel like they have to prove their experience to us. We really shouldn't be going around expecting that people have to defend their life or their circumstances to feel like they can belong to our movement. So.
Okay, so the other thing we wanted to talk about today is our anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist stance on veganism. So, you know, just light stuff. In our eyes, we feel that veganism should be like feminism, anarchism, atheism, or anti-racism. It's something that should be a radical political stance. It's something that should be making people a little bit uncomfortable. And we certainly see that events like this are important to provide community and to make plant-based eating feel accessible to a wider range of people. And we certainly think that that's important. But we do see a watering down in the mainstream movement of what veganism really should stand for, which is anti-animal oppression or being pro-animal liberation. So we've noticed that veganism has become a lot about what you purchase, what you eat, so literally what you consume. And when we approach veganism from this way, we're essentially being pro-capitalist because we're being pro-consumption in defining it from this angle. And we understand why we do this, right? It feels good. It feels good to say if I go to the store and I don't buy anything with animal products, then I'm saving animals' lives. And we get it. We were in the same headspace for years. But as our activism has grown and as we've become more pro-intersectional, more aware of other movements and other people's experiences, we've realized that this is a trap of capitalism. Basing our veganism within a capitalist framework means that we're actually supporting animal exploitation. We talk a lot about mainstreaming veganism, but veganism really shouldn't feel mainstream. Even as it grows and becomes more accepted, it should be something that makes the general public a little uncomfortable, a little like, ooh, what is that? Eating plant-based, yeah, sure, let that be cozy, let that be accessible, but we feel a vegan practice should include a lot of rule breaking. So we see two main problems with defining the vegan movement strictly on consumption. The first problem is that we're actually continuing to support animal consumption. And I know that sounds really awful and backwards and wrong. We've all seen the memes of like how many lives everyone saves every year when they don't eat animals. But unfortunately, it's true. As veganism has grown, so has animal consumption. Animal consumption might be down in certain areas and even certain countries, and consumption of certain animals might be down, again, in certain areas or certain countries. But if you look at the numbers on a global level, animal consumption across all types of animals, you'll see that consumption is way up and it's growing. So we want to blame this on other countries, right? Here in the U.S., we want to say, oh, that's because of other countries. They're eating more animals. We're actually eating less. And that can be true. As our vegan population has grown, certainly animal consumption's down in certain areas. But the growth globally is due to companies in the United States taking our money that we give them when we flock to them and buy vegan products, and these companies that purchase vegan companies to then expand their line. And they use these profits to aggressively promote animal consumption in other countries. If any of you know about cigarettes, tobacco companies, John Oliver did a great segment on this. They did the same thing. As tobacco consumption is down in the U.S., they used their money to go increase it in other countries. So the harsh reality is that unless you're able to eat 100% homegrown food or get your food, if you're a freegan, which we love, we think that's such a radical, great way to disrupt the system, or if you only ever purchase things from small, local vegan shops, then you are essentially putting money in the pockets of large corporations that are expanding into other countries and saturating them with cheap, addictive, animal-based foods, just like they've been doing to us for decades. McDonald's, for instance, has proactively banned gestation crates and added vegan options to their menu, and yet they've opened stores at a dizzying rate of one a day in countries like China, specifically focusing on small and rural areas. So last year, for a speech we did in London, I pulled the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's numbers and was devastated to find out that meat consumption's increased more than 60% overall from 2012 to 2016. This is the same span of years that if you do a Google Trends search, you'll see that veganism increased dramatically over those same searches for veganism increased dramatically. So we can see that an increase in veganism does not equate to a decrease in animal consumption overall. So, to summarize, basically the reason we feel that this is dangerous to focus on animal consumption is that it doesn't actually correlate with a decrease, but then we move on and we forget to tackle the other things that need to happen in order for us to actually bring down the animal agriculture industry. And then the other problem with approaching veganism this way is that it excludes many of the very people we so desperately need in the movement. It's racist, classist, and ableist, among other things, to tightly define veganism based on consumption rather than the actions you take and the way your ethics show up in your life and the way you're able to practice veganism. Because this tells people who can't consume in a very certain way that they can't be part of our movement. And these are the very same people who tend to create success in social movements throughout history. So we've gotten letters from people, for instance, who are suffering from restrictive eating disorders and can't eat vegan yet because it would be detrimental to their treatment. However, those same people could go out and do other things that could still forward animal liberation. And I don't want those people feeling like they're not part of our movement simply because they're suffering from mental illness or from an eating disorder or a chronic illness, anything like that. We certainly see as well that there's people who can't afford certain foods or that don't have access to them. And again, I don't want those people excluded from our movement. Those are exactly the people we need to be working with. Can you help me? Thank you. We also get emails from a lot of young vegans, a lot of people who are in middle school and high school who are like, hey, I don't control the food that's in my house, but I really want to be part of this movement. And we tell them, then you're vegan. You're here. You're with us. That's amazing. We should be fostering these young people to come up and feel like they have something to contribute, whether or not they're able to eat vegan 100% of the time. So, to conclude, as always, Callie and I are anarchists. We do not believe in the violence of telling people what to think or believe. So we hope today we've just given you all something to think about. If this made you uncomfortable, if you're vegan and you didn't like some of what we said, maybe think about why. Come talk to us about it, talk to other people about it. It's a long process. We certainly didn't get here overnight. But as we move forward in our vegan activism, we just feel more and more that it's very important to always keep in mind that capitalism is basically fueled by oppression, and we have to be talking about that when we talk about animal liberation. And we met some people today, actually, that want to be vegan and are like, oh, I'm not 100% pure yet, I'm not 100% there yet. And to them I say, call yourself vegan or call yourself a practicing vegan and join us, because the fact that you want to so badly and that you're taking steps, to me, you're a part of my community and I welcome you. So thank you, everyone.